Hi, everybody. So first of all, I would like to thank our sponsor, Redgate, and also say thank you to SQL Saturday Haiti for having me here. I'm sorry, I live in Canada, Montreal, but I do not speak French. My French is very basic. I'm not able to present, and I hope it's okay that I present in English. If you have any questions, just feel free to send them to me. So today I'm going to talk about an exciting topic for me. If you are new to Azure and you just want to start, this is the presentation for you. So basically, even if you never touched Azure and you would like to start with Azure storage, Data Lake storage, and Azure Synapse, and analyzing your data right away, this is the presentation for you. So it's going to be a very basic presentation for anyone that would like to start using Azure Synapse and analyze your data right away. Just a little bit about me. So I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. I work for EPAM. I'm a senior data platform architect. At EPAM is a company, is a worldwide company, mainly from Europe, and we do everything related to data platform development, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science. So we do huge projects for many huge clients in the world, and we are partners with Microsoft as well as other cloud providers, and we help them, move our clients to the cloud. Let's start. So this presentation is for really anyone in IT. You don't actually need to be an expert in any data platform, but you do need at least a basic knowledge of Transact SQL and SQL. But even if you don't, you will get by. And you need a basic knowledge in database design, and that's it. So this presentation is really basic. It's just to start. And later on, we have a session by Gutzait, which is more or less, it's more advanced, and it's related to what I'm talking right now. So the same environments, the same tools are going to be shown, but more advanced topics. And it's going to be in French. So let's see what we have right now on the agenda. So I'm going to define the potential current architecture that you may have right now. I'm going to define the goals of why we need to move to Azure Synapse and what are our potential goals with doing so. I'm going to talk about the data platform architecture on Azure in general, as well as what we're focused on today. I'm going to speak about why would we like to use the Azure data storage, Data Lake storage, and Synapse Serverless. I'm going to show some very, very sweet demos. But based on the demos, you can basically just start and doing your own exercises and your own experiments. I'm going to talk about the queries and performance, and we're going to compare performance between what we have right now and in Azure. I'm going to talk a little bit about the pricing, because this is something that is very scary for some organizations, because the pricing model is a little bit different than having everything on-prem. And then I'm going to let us have a session of Q&A. So let's start. Your potential current architecture, let's say that you have a lot of data sources, you have a lot of databases or data sources. Over the years, many enterprise organizations or even small organizations accumulated a lot of systems, many databases, many platforms. And now we realize that we need to do something with that data. So what are we doing with that data? So basically, there are some common scenarios, like, for example, let's say that you need to do some complicated reporting across multiple platforms or across multiple operational data. You need to summarize things. You need to do like analytics and trending. and a lot of things that we can do with the basic existing data. But the problem is that there are not a lot of tools that are going to allow us to access the actual operational data. And also maybe we shouldn't, because we don't want to affect the performance. We don't want to, to start updating the source databases. And maybe you have even external data sources, like, for example, Salesforce on the Salesforce cloud. Maybe you already have sources on other cloud providers like Amazon or Google, and you would like to make sure that you have one place where you can create reports or analytics. So basically, the old fashion was that we would create data warehouses or data warehouse and reporting environments in the old-fashioned way. So replication, availability groups if it's SQL Server, tools that are like replicating data across, to a specific data warehouse. Usually, previously we used to have like another relational database that is called data warehouse, or we have some appliances that can be data warehouse. But things change, and from the user perspective, the user wants to connect to that data warehouse or reporting environment and just run queries. So this is what you currently have, but over time, maybe you start having performance issues, because if you're using relational database or old technology, maybe you have a lot of issues with transferring the data and transforming the data. And it becomes a big spaghetti or performance issues that you have. And then you just want to start from fresh and see how you can improve your data warehouse and reporting environments. So what are the common goals in having like a new, fresh data warehouse or analytics environment? Usually what the main goal is that you would like to have fast reporting environment. You don't want to affect the OLTP environment or the operational environment. And you want to make sure that even if you have large sets of data, you're still going to get proper performance. Obviously, you don't want to impact the performance of the source systems. Sometimes when we talk about database models, you have the physical model of the operational database. For example, you call things differently than the business would call them. So you may call a customer, but from the business perspective, it would be a client, and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we separate the physical model in the databases from the business model. And another example is that you have multiple systems. In one system, you would call it a client, and in another system, because let's say it's a third party, or it's a different team that developed, so the table is called client, and in another system, it's called something else. So you would like to have like the same business model in a centralized place. You would like to have one source of truth. So basically, if you do have multiple systems and you have different client IDs, for example, you would like to have like a place, and even the client names can be different, right? So you in one system you call it client X, and in another one it's going to be client XX. So you would like to have like a place where the business is going to see things in the same way and be able to analyze the data based on that. Potentially, you would like to have self-serve analytics. So what I've seen is that the market is going towards self-serve analytics. So imagine that until now, and it's still happening, the businesses are being driven by IT. So maybe it's your case. Let's say that you have a marketing department and they need a specific trending report. So what they do is they call the IT and they ask for this report. The IT is creating that report. Then there's a back and forth. Yeah, we didn't mean this, we didn't mean that. The IT has to do a lot of data transformations or transformations in reports, and then the business gets what they want. But the trend that I'm seeing and my colleagues are seeing is that the business is looking more and more to be able to do their own analytics themselves, so that you have the IT is making sure that the data is in a central place, like a data warehouse or analytics platform, and then the business is the one that is doing all the analytics on top of that in an easy way, right? Because they need to be able to create their own queries, create their own reports, and so forth. Another big thing is that data has been accumulating for years. And as you know, when you have huge OLTP databases, this may affect performance and other stuff. So you need more space and you need more resources. So the idea is that usually the data is not going to be required for the operational system, but it's going to be required more for trending and more for reporting. So another common goal in the data warehouse is that we're going to move the data or copy over the data into a repository that is the analytics, but we're going to remove this data from the operational system, so that the operational system is going to be as thin as possible and performance is going to be as great as possible. Another thing that we can see is that when we're talking about the operational data, we see the actual raw data, but sometimes we need a place where we can see the data summaries, and we can go back to see the actual data, or maybe not. So really depending on your implementation, it's either you need to see the source data or the data summarized because you don't care about the raw data. Some other goals could be, so for example, let's say that you have an operational database and the rows are being updated as you go. So for example, if I'm moving from one address to the other, some systems, the way they were built, maybe legacy systems, you will only see my last address. But for some data warehouse, it is important to keep the version of what, the changes. So you would like to know where I was living before and where I'm living now. So you can do that by, in your analytics platform, you can keep the row versioning, but not in the source database. Because sometimes in the source database, it doesn't really important. It's not important where I was living before. But for your trends, you would like to know where I was living before and where did I go, right? So row versioning and time snapshot. So you would like to have reports saying, okay, yesterday, what did I have? And today, what do I have? So you want to be able to compare between two time snapshots. That's just an example. And probably as you go, you will find other common goals or other things that are very important. I try to gather the main ones based on my experience. You may have a different experience, and I would love to hear about this too. So let's talk about the data platform architecture on Azure. If you go to this URL in the bottom, this is how Microsoft sees the entire analytics stack. So as you can see, Azure Synapse is part of it. So you have data sources, then you have you ingest data while using pipelines, either by Synapse or Azure Data Factory. And then you place data on Azure Data Lake in files, and then you analyze the data with Synapse. And then there's a lot more. So the entire Microsoft stack includes a lot of services. And as you can see in the bottom, you also have Azure Active Directory, you have security services, you have monitoring, and so forth. But this presentation is very basic, and therefore I'm going to focus only on the basics. So before I start with the basics, let's just understand the modern process of reporting and analytics platforms. So what you see here on my screen now is the way that Databricks have created some kind of a process. But this is how the industry sees the analytics platform. So let's go and see what we have. So you do have some data sources that can be relational databases like Oracle, SQL Server, even Access and stuff like that. Then you may have like NoSQL or documents, files everywhere as data sources. And you can even have streaming data where you need to make sure that you have real-time analytics. So those are the data sources. So this can sit either in a cloud or on-prem. And then what we do is we have a bronze or a raw layer where we say, okay, we have the data sources. Let's bring the data, raw data as is, into a layer. So basically, if you have a customer table in an Oracle database, you would bring the table in. Maybe you have another customer table in another SQL Server database. You will bring that customer in. So this one is going to be called, I don't know, sales customer. The other one is going to be called something else customer. So you will have like a layer where you ingest the raw data. And this is important because this way you can trace back to the data if you need. And let's continue and we'll see how it is implemented. So the next layer, because we're bringing raw data from multiple systems, the next layer would be to kind of validate or reject or slightly transform, make sure that we have foreign keys relationship, because we're not actually implementing physically the foreign keys relationship, but we need to make sure that we have foreign keys relationships, or we have, if we're bringing clients, customer data from different systems, we know how to join them and make sure that we have one row per customer. So this is where we do some kind of validations. And so on the silver layer, we will have the validated data, and we can have even rejected data. So someone has to go look at what has been rejected and why, and make sure that the processes are being updated, or decide what to do with the rejected data. So the silver one is the validated and cleansed zone of the data. Okay, and then after that, we want to make sure that we take this validated data and we make it visual for the system, for the business. So like I said before, if we have customer, maybe the business is expecting another terminology. Maybe the business is expecting different type of data, maybe not everything from here or from here, but they're expecting like a specific schema or definition of the data. And it doesn't have to be everything. And then on the other side, we have the data consumption, the reports, the analytics based on the visual layer. Now, this is not set in stone. The data consumption on the reports can still go back to the bronze layer. The data is already there, or to the silver layer. So if you want to, for example, we are getting a report based on the business terminology, but we still want to understand where it's coming from, we can use all those layers. So this is the new methodology, and basically you can store the data in a hot, cold, or archive tiers. Each one has their own price tag. If it's hot, it means that you're going to get good performance. If it's cold, it means that this is archived data. You can still access the data, but maybe performance is not going to be as good. And this is, for example, let's say that your reports need to work on the last year. So you need good performance for the last year. But every once in a while, someone needs a row from 7 years ago. So that's on the cold storage. So they will still get the data, but it's not going to cost you a lot to keep this data on the storage, but you will still be able to query it. Maybe the performance is not going to be as good, but it doesn't matter as long as you can access the data. And then we have archive, which probably will take longer to retrieve, but the data is still there. So this is just to save on costs, and also to be able to still keep the data handy for you, just different performance tiers. So this is the introduction to the way that we're doing business now with on the data analytics platforms. Let's talk about Azure. So if we look at the way that we're doing business now on the analytics platforms with Azure, and if you remember, I showed the Microsoft slide, which contains a lot more, but I'm trying to simplify it here. So let's assume that because we're talking Microsoft, let's assume that you have OLTP systems, either on-prem or external, could be RDS, could be on Google, could be any private cloud or anywhere, any data center. And then you may have databases also on Azure, so you can have managed instances, or you can have SQL databases, you can have VMs with SQL Server. So you have your OLTP databases anywhere. And then you may have additional batch data, you know, like all kind of data that is coming in batch to the system. So you have, so we have this first layer, which is the ingestion, okay? So we ingest the raw data. We're using Azure Data Factory. We could use also Synapse Analytics pipelines, but I'm going to show you this is what we're going to do today. So Azure Data Factory, you have pipelines. You can use the Data Lake, which is a little bit more advanced topic, where you can have transactional system over Azure Data Lake storage. So you have pipelines to move data to the Data Lake storage. You can still have transactional system, or the storage can be a SQL database, like we were doing until now with the data warehouse. And then you can analyze the data that is on the storage with Azure Synapse, or you can even analyze the data. You know, you can move the data to a SQL database and analyze it there. And then if we're talking about Azure, we also have Power BI where we can push data to Power BI. If we have Power BI Premium, and analyze the data in there. So as you can see, we have ingest, store, analyze, and serve layers. And then you can analyze on-prem or external. You can analyze if you have applications or Excel or SQL Server or SSMS. You can analyze data anywhere on Azure. But let's simplify this. Before that, you can also add, the streaming component. So you can have streaming going to the data lake storage, and you can use Purview to look at what happened to the data from the source until it gets to any destination. So it's like Purview allows you to look at the lineage of the data. And I know that we have a presentation in this SQL Saturday about Purview. So if you're interested, I'm not sure if it was already done, but there is a presentation about that. But let's simplify today. We're going to focus on the bottom line, the bottom layer, which is let's bring data from the OLTP using Azure Data Factory into the data lake and then analyze it with Synapse, because I would like to show you how easy it is to do this. You have a SQL Server source. It could be Oracle, it could be anything else, but today I'm going to show SQL Server as a source, moving data as is into the Azure Data Lake storage and analyze with Synapse Analytics. And I'm going to show you what are the components in Synapse Analytics that we're going to use today.
Michelle,
yes?
Can you click on the hide button to hide the screen sharing bar? Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you couldn't see it. Sorry. Okay. So let's talk about the data lake. So the data lake is actually a blob storage it's a blob storage, and it basically looks like any other file share. So the way that it's organized, we have containers. Under the containers, we have folders. Under the folders, we have files, and the files can have different formats. Okay, so for example, we have the container would be the raw data, or the reporting data, or whatever you want to call it. Then you have the folders that will usually be the name of the table. So for example, customers or orders. And the files are going to be usually with based on Parquet files, because Parquet files, even though a lot of formats are accessible, and it's going to be the same with any of those formats, so we can analyze the data anyways. But Parquet files allows us to do partitioning, to partition the data. And this is a more advanced topic, so I'm not going to talk about that. But also Parquet files, the data is very compressed. So when you play, when I'm going to show you, we're going to see that even if the tables are very large, on the Parquet files, it's, let's say that the table is few gigabytes, you will see that on the as a Parquet file is going to be like few megabytes. So it's very compressed, and therefore performance is going to be much better. So why Azure Data Lake storage? Why do we need that? So as you can see, from database, we're going back to files. So why do we do that? First of all, it's a very cheap solution. If you look at the TCO, like total cost of ownership, this is a very cheap solution, and I'm going to talk about the prices at the end. Basically, using if you have a database, it is the maintenance of the database is expensive, even if you have something on-prem. As the database grows, you need to add more resources, you need to add more disks. And if you have the database on Azure, you may need eventually, as data grows, or as the user base grows, you need to add more resources, or to even move from tier to tier. So this is a very cheap solution, and we will talk about that. I have a colleague that calls it's like bananas. It's really cheap. It's easy. It's very fast to configure and create the data lake storage. It's an Azure service. You just create the service and boom, you have it. And also to configure it is very easy. It's easy to maintain, and I'm going to show what can we do with that. It's easy to navigate and find information. It can be used right away. So once the data is in the data lake, we will see how we can right away start querying it in a very simple way. It has a very satisfying performance. So when I'm saying satisfying, what I'm going to show today is a very basic way to review the data, which has the cost is really low. There are other ways to analyze the data, but they cost a little bit more, and they may provide better performance. But even with the simple way that I'm going to show today, it is a satisfying performance. And just to give you an example of a client that I had recently, they were complaining they had the data where they have a data warehouse on SQL Server instance that is on-prem. And the instance has a lot of activity, and it has a lot of resources. Like it's a big machine. And they were complaining that a report that was taking 15 minutes to run. And this is not only, it's not only because it takes that long to run, it's because you have user activity at the same time on an OLTP database. So you have locks, blocks, deadlocks, and you have locks mechanism, and you have a lot of things that are happening in the database engine. So in the data lake storage, all these things are not there because this is not a database. And even if you're ingesting data in a way that is not interfering with what already exists. So I was able to, and this client had tables that were like 800 million rows in some tables. And even with all the indexes that they created on those tables, I was able to, just by moving the data to the data lake and analyzing with Synapse, I was able to get the same report in 39 seconds. Okay, so when I'm saying satisfying performance, it really depends what you're doing, but you will get the data in a satisfying amount of time. And also it's well integrated with other Azure services, or obviously Microsoft is integrating all the services within each other, and this is great. So for example, it's integrated well with the Purview, it's integrated well with Synapse. I'm going to talk about Synapse later. It's integrated with with ADA, with Data Factory, and so forth. So let's see what I'm going to show you in the demo. In the demo, I'm going to do something very basic. I'm going to take a table called product from a SQL database, AdventureWorks. This SQL database is an Azure database, but this exercise can be done with any SQL server, either on-prem or a managed instance or a VM. I'm using Azure Data Factory pipelines to just copy the data as is into the data lake. So I do have a container called row container. I will show you that. Underneath, we have the product. We will create a product folder, and we will create the file product 2022.parquet files. Okay, so it's going to be a file, Parquet file, with all the data of that specific table. So let me just go here. I just wanted to show you. So this is I'm connecting SSMS on my laptop to the database called AdventureWorks 2019. I will show you that database shortly. I created two very large tables, customer and orders, and I'm going to show you later what I've done. But what I did is I moved the customer and the orders tables into Parquet files. This one has 80 million rows, and this one, I think it has 20 million rows. Okay, so I already did that. And the reason why I'm not doing this with you is because it takes a little bit of time. I don't want to wait. So what I will do, I will show you how to do that with this small table called product. So if, for example, let me just connect here, just to make sure that I'm connected here. And let's see. So let's select count star, oops, from this table. And you will see that I have only 295. But if I do the same thing with customer, and it's taking time. And I'm going to do this. See, you have 80 million, and now you need to trust me on this one, that here we also have a lot of rows. So 80 millions and also 80 millions. Sorry, 8 millions. So orders had 8 millions and customer has 80 millions. So they're already on Azure. So now I'm going to show you the process, how to move the product table to the data storage. So not this one. So let's go here. So this is Azure. I connected to Azure. And I do have a lot of services, but for this, and just ignore the names, it's because I already had those created for different purposes. I have Data Factory, I have Synapse Workspace, and I have storage account for Azure Data Lake Storage Generation 2. So that's the Data Lake, this one. And I do have this AdventureWorks as the SQL database, okay? So if you go here, you will see that this is the server name. Okay, so if I copy this and I go to my SSMS, let's say I want to connect to that one. Okay, I can connect. And I do have a SQL login, even though you can integrate with Active Directory and you can have other type of authentication. But for this demo, I'm going to just show you that I can connect to that one, okay? And then if I look here, I have the AdventureWorks 2019, which is this Azure database, okay? So this is the Azure database. And what I will do right now is I'm going to show you the storage account. In the storage account, I have containers, and I already created 2 of them. This one is created by default. So you see I have the raw and the silver. Okay, we can call it differently based on your implementation and design. So if we go here to the raw, you will see that I already moved the customer table that I showed you. So I wanted to show you, so for example, this one is the latest version of the table. And before that, when I had less than 80 millions, I also moved. And the reason why I wanted to show you this is because later when we talk about Synapse, you will see that when we're querying a directory, okay, so we're going to query the directory customer, it's going to give us all the information. So basically it's important, this is also important for partitioning, all the files have to have the same schema underneath a folder, so that with Synapse we can analyze the entire set of data. So any file that you will have here needs to have the same format, but can have either the same type of data or differently. But from Synapse we can analyze that. That means that you can decide which data you bring into that folder, as long as it has the same schema for Synapse to be able to query it as a table. And the same I did for orders. In the case of orders, I just created 1 Parquet files. And now I'm going to show you how we do that. Before we start, as you can see, this is 74 megabytes, okay, on Parquet file. If I go to the database and I go here, and let's go here to the customer data, sorry, it was the orders database. Let's see how much it takes. So let's go to the reports. It's just one way to do that, or I cannot do that here. So let's go to properties. And then I know, so you cannot do that here. But if you look at there's a script that you can run to show the size. You will see that it's more than 74 megabytes. So when it's in a database, it's going to be probably like I don't know. Like 200 megabytes or something like that. And then on Azure, it's much less because it's in Parquet file and it's already compressed. So this is so now that you saw what I've done, I'm going to do the same thing for the little table that we were talking about. Okay, so let's start. First of all, I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to go to the raw data. And I'm going to add a directory that is going to be called product. And as you can see, I can decide how to call it. For example, if we're talking about this table, so I could call it sales LT. I could even create a folder sales LT for the schema. And then underneath, I can create the product. For this demo, I'm going to just create the product directory. So that's done. Now I have that. What else what's next? I have to go to, so let's go here and let's go to the data factory. And if I want to do anything with the data factory, I need to open the data factory studio. And by the way, you can create pipelines also in Synapse, but in this demo, I'm going to create the pipeline in Azure Data Factory. They work more or less the same. And I'm going to do something very basic. I'm going to do ingest. And I'm going to bulk copy. So if you've been working with SQL Server, you know that this is like the expert. And I can decide if I want to run it now or on a schedule or on a tumbling window. But for now, I want to run it once. So I do next. So I already created sources, but if you want to create, so for example, now we need to connect to the SQL database. So what you do is you look for SQL database and continue, and then you can call it whatever you want. Okay. Now you see interactive authoring disabled. This is something that if you have it, what you need to do is you need to edit. It's a component that allows you to interact directly with services. And it's disabled after a few minutes or like maybe 30 minutes. So I do that, I will let it run, it's enabling, and only after I do that I can continue, okay? But in my case, I already created, so this here I'm going to be able to put the server name. As you remember I copied the server name, and then I can choose the database, which is AdventureWorks, blah, 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 and then decide on the authentication and create. So I'm letting this run. And let's move here to the other window where we already have this, and we do ingest, next. And then here I already have this. So I have a SQL Server. Let me check SQL Server. And let's see the connection that I already have. So I already created AdventureWorks connection based on what you saw. And now what it's doing, it's testing the connection. Yeah, it didn't finish. Okay, now it's enabled, so I can do that. And I can do, let's do it again. More. Okay, let me do it again because it was not ready. And AdventureWorks. Okay, interactive. Okay, let's do previous. I'm going to run it again. And right now it's working. Okay, let's cancel, do it again. It's because it was not enabled. So I'm doing it again. And let's go AdventureWorks. And now it's testing the connection. Now it will succeed, and we will get the list of tables. Now, you see it's loading the list of tables, and this allows me to also choose multiple tables. But from best practice perspective, it's better to do one by one, because this way you can control what you're doing with a specific table. So let's just check the product one, okay? And next. So we can preview data if we want. This is showing us the data from that specific table. I have a problem with Firefox. I have to do this. Okay, so the table has data. We have 295 rows, and then my target is going to be Azure Blob Storage, right? And I have to select, and again, if I want to create, I have to do a new connection and then choose my Data Lake storage. This one I have, just a second, where are you? So it's not, sorry, it's not a blob storage, it's generation 2. Right? We shouldn't be confused. It's Azure Data Lake Storage Generation 2. And I did create 2 that are the same. Let's use this one. And what it's doing, it's bringing the connection. So now we need to browse the folder. So as you remember, we have raw, we have product. Okay, we choose that directory. And then we want to, call the file probably product 2022.parquet. And we have additional things that we can create. Usually, like you can decide on if it's a huge table, you can decide on the concurrent connections and the block size in each file, and additional stuff. This is a small table. I'm going to use the default. And even for the big tables, I use the default, and it was very fast. And I'm going to choose the Parquet and Snappy format. As you can see, I can also say how many rows per file. This is more advanced topics, and I'm going to do next. Now here I want to call it, because I'm going to create a pipeline, I want to call it product. I'm just going to copy this because I'm going to use it a lot. I can describe this, and I can enable logging and stuff like that. So there are a lot of additional things that I can do. And then I click next. And then it gives me the summary. So as you can see here, it gives me like a name that doesn't have any meaning. So I'm going to do this and save. And I'm going to do the same for the destination and save. And now I have the summary. So my pipeline is composed of a copy tasks from AdventureWorks, which is the database, the linked service that I created. Yeah, this is the table from the source, and so forth. Okay, and the timeout is 7 minutes. I think it's good enough, and let's do next. So now it's checking that my pipeline is okay, and everything. It does not run it, but it validates it. And then I have few options. So if I do finish here, it just creates the pipeline. If I want to add some stuff, I can do edit pipeline. I'm going to show you this later. Or I can do monitor, and then it will start running, and I will be able to monitor the progress. But it also saves the pipeline. So I will do monitor, saving the pipeline. And here you go. You see, this is my pipeline, and it's currently in progress. And so I can refresh and make sure that it's running and it's successful. So when it's going to take a few seconds, and I'm going to see successful, and then we're going to go and look at what it created. Takes a little bit of time. It's verifying the schema, creating everything. And so while we're here, I'm going to show you that you can click on monitor and review all the pipelines that were there. So I can, for example, if I remove the filter, I can see that, for example, the product copy took 1 minute and 11 seconds. And remember, the product, this one is the small one. And the orders took 1 minute and 39 seconds. So that's a huge table, and it still took very little, okay, to run. Let's go back to this one. So this one also succeeded. Okay, so this one I ran differently, the customer, and it ran for 6 minutes. So 80 million rows. And just to give you an indication, 80 million rows, and I don't have a VPN, I don't have express route, and it worked 80 million rows in 6 minutes. That's like crazy good performance. Okay, so let's go here. So there are different ways to trigger the pipeline, and this one is done. So let's go back to the data lake storage. Okay, so let's go back to the data lake storage. Let's look at the containers, raw, product, and voila. Okay, so you see we have 191K for that Parquet file. Okay, now if I want to go and, for example, change something, this is not the one. Let's close this. This is the one. If I want to look here, then I have the pipelines, and I can go here and I can view the pipeline. So I have the copy activity, and here it's what it's doing. We're copying. We have the source, the product. So I can still modify a lot of things. So for example, if I want to use partitioning, or if I want to do other stuff, or for example, here I can change all the things because the pipeline already exists. And then if I make a modification, I'm going to show you. Let's say for now I want to, for example, modify this to product. You see here, I have publish all. So if I don't do publish, this change is not, it's like saving, okay? So I can publish, and then this modification is going to be saved into the pipeline. So the next time I open the pipeline, this modification is going to be there. Now, you can take this pipeline later for more advanced users, and you can do, like, if you need to do transformations or do something else after that, you can just use this to add additional activities. But because this presentation is really basic, what we've seen is copy to the data lake, to the data lake storage. Okay, let's continue. So I don't know if you have any questions here. If you do, let me know. So I cannot see the questions right now, I guess. So maybe later, maybe we'll do it later. Okay, so this is what we've done. We took the product table, and we moved it to the data lake storage. So let's see what's next. Let me talk about Synapse, Azure Synapse Analytics. So when you spin up a Synapse workspace, you can use 3 different engines, and each one of those is very powerful. Okay, so the dedicated pool is like a SQL Server-like engine where you can create and select objects. You can basically create actual tables based on files in the data lake very quickly and analyze them. You can also create external tables or views or use Polybase to query data directly from the data lake storage. But this component is a little bit more expensive. I'm going to talk about this when we talk about the prices. Another engine is the Spark, which is more advanced. You can do things with Spark. I'm not going to touch this at all, but the Serverless Pools is the default engine that is coming with the Synapse workspace and allows you to map external tables or views directly to the data lake storage. So remember that you do have additional engines, but for now, our focus for today will be the Serverless Sql Pool. It's an engine that from your perspective looks like SQL Server. You connect to it like you would to SQL Server, but it doesn't have all the capabilities of T-SQL. It has the basics. The idea is that you map external tables into to the files that we just created, and you start selecting from them. You can do the same thing with views. So let's see what we're going to do in our demo. So we do have the customer table, the customer folder, and the order folder in the data lake storage. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take the Serverless Sql Pool from Synapse and create an external table for customer and an external table for order. But I already did that, so I'm going to do the same thing to the product table that I just created. And we're going to see how we can query the Serverless Sql Pool, but this is not really, we don't have to create a database. The queries are going directly to the data lake storage files. Okay, so are you ready? Let's do this. So I'm going back here. And what I have to do right now is open Synapse Analytics. So I have the Synapse Analytics here. And the way to do things with Synapse, I need to open the Synapse Studio. So when I open the Synapse space, I have the Open Synapse Studio, and I'm just going to open it. So it opens like a different interface. And let's see what we can do here. I have to connect. As you can see, I could do the same thing as I did with the ADF. I can do here. But what is interested here is that we have the workspace where we have the linked. So I've already created a link to the storage. So as you can see, I can see the storage. And if I do this, you will see that I have my raw, and I can see everything that I've done so far. Okay. So this is my product, and what I would like to do, so I can do 2 things. I can create external table directly on the file. So I right click here, new SQL scripts, and create external table. But I don't want to do it directly to the file. I would like to do this to the, as you remember, to the folder. So I can do the same thing to the folder, okay? So I can either select top 100 or do whatever, create a view based on that, or I can create external table. Let's create the external table. Now, as you can see here, that means that every file that I will have under this folder is going to be part of that external table. That means that I can add data in new Parquet files, and they will be queried when I query this external table. So here I do continue. I have to select a database. So this database, this is Synapse Analytics Serverless Pool database, which I created in advance. So when you create the Synapse Analytics, you go to the serverless and you can create databases. So I created one. I don't have another one. And then now here you decide what's the name of your external table. So as you can see, let's go back here. I have a schema here, right? So here, so I can decide either here I use this schema, or I want to just, you know, call it something else. I can just do, you know, DBO. Okay. So in this case, I would like to do DBO to show that it's not related. It doesn't have to be the same. And I'm going to use a script because I'm going to show you what we can do with the script. So as you can see, the script was created for me, where it's going to create the file format for the Parquet. It's going to create the external data source, but only if not exist. And then you see there's a little bug here, okay, that it doesn't include the schema. So for example, I don't have to do this for DBO, but if it was a different schema, I should. So it's creating the product, and as you can see, the location is the product directory with all the files underneath. If I wanted, I could change that, right? If all of a sudden I decided I just want a file, I can put the name of the file here, and then it selects the top 100 from that external table. You see here, there's no bug, so we took the schema. Okay, so now I have, you see this one is disabled because I have to choose a database, because I can have multiple serverless databases. In this case, I have to choose this, and then I can run this, okay? So I'm running this. It's going to create a table, and it's going to select store procedure. What's your problem? Let me check. Maybe I need this. Okay, now you go. So you do need the schema, and you see it's selecting the first 100. Now, maybe I would like to save this script for later. I would like somebody else to use this for any other reason. So I can do something like create external table product. Okay, product. And then you see here, publish all as well. So I give it a meaningful name. I can create like a description as well. And then I publish it. Okay, so I publish it. So the first step was created the external table for me. And the second one is publishing the script. So let's see what I've done. Okay, so I have the databases. So I have the workspace, which is the database. I have a SQL database that is a serverless, and this is my adventure works. And as you can see, I have all the external tables, including the one that I just created here. So I could do right click, new script, and select top as usual, okay? Let's go to the scripts. All the scripts that I was saving, you see, that's the script that I just saved. So anybody that wants to look at the script that I used can go here. And basically, I can create views this way. I can do a lot of things here. You can integrate Synapse with DevOps or with GitHub when you create it, okay? Or even after, you can configure to integrate with that. So now, if I go here to Synapse, I go here, you see I have a lot of information on Synapse, including the endpoint to the dedicated SQL and the serverless endpoint. So if I copy this, I can connect to the Synapse from Management Studio. So in this case, I already did that. This is my Synapse. So as you can see, I have the Adventure Works, and I can see all the tables as well. Fresh. tables, external tables, and I can see my tables. So that means that now I can create queries. Okay, so for example, if I have queries, now I can compare. This one is going to my Azure database, for example. So it giving me the the results. So this one in SQL Server, you see it's taking a while. I can do the same thing connecting here, new query. And I can do the same thing. I choose a database. This is Synapse, and I can execute this. And you see it comes, this one took 11 seconds, and this one took 1 second on Synapse. Okay.
Michelle, we're sorry, time is up. We have some questions. We're gonna take 2, I think.
Okay.
What are the main features of data warehouse?
The main feature of data warehouse?
Yes.
Okay, so so Synapse has a lot of nice things that we can do, but this presentation is very basic, just to show you that you can use the data lake storage and right away create external tables, like just point external tables into it and start querying it right away. And so it's disconnected from a SQL database. Synapse has a lot of features. Like I said, it has a workspace with Spark and with the dedicated SQL pool. You can do a lot of additional things, but I just wanted to show you the basic. So I'm not sure. Maybe you can define the question, because it's very generic. So what would you look for? And I can tell you if you can do that with Synapse serverless.
You will give the answers in the comments, but what is data streaming used for?
What is data warehouse used for?
What is data streaming used for?
Streaming?
Yeah, data streaming.
Data storming. I don't understand the question.
What is data streaming used for?
Oh, data streaming. Data streaming is real-time analytics. It means that if you have an OLTP system and you want to do real-time analytics, you can stream the data into the data warehouse in real time.
Thank you. What is the difference between dedicated SQL pool and serverless SQL pool? The last one.
That's a great question. So serverless pool, as you can see, it doesn't have a database underneath. You don't have to bring the data into like a database type. Serverless just uses external tables to query the data lake storage directly. And it's very cheap because it's not a real engine. It's a distributed system, but it's not a real SQL Server engine. Let me just quickly talk. I don't want to talk about performance, but let's talk quickly about the prices so that you will have some understanding. So when you have Azure, you need a lot of things. Sometimes if you're an enterprise, you need a lot of things like ExpressRoute and Azure Active Directory. And if you're connecting to on-prem sources, you need on-prem self-hosted integration runtime and stuff like that. And as you can see, sometimes you need Databricks, you need dedicated pool. But I wanted to show you the prices of just an Azure Data Blob Storage Generation 2, let's say 20 terabytes, hot storage, local redundancy, hierarchical, meaning that you can partition, and the standard tier. Look at the price here. And look at the price of the Azure Synapse with serverless pool. So my bottom line is that you do have additional engines, but for a lot of implementations in a very, very cheap way, you can just bring your data into the data lake, into Azure, and analyze the data right away with queries with T-SQL that you already know. So even existing applications may be compatible with that environment. Okay, so that was my bottom line. You can do a lot of things with Azure Synapse and the data lake, but even the basic is giving you a lot of functionality and a lot of strength, because I showed you that the queries are much more performing than if you do it in a SQL database.